Thank you very much for joining us in this session. As you will see, this is all about school resource management advisors. And if you were here at the beginning of our day, this was a role that was discussed in the panel session. There was some good conversations, and there was a remembering that the focus about this role is ensuring that the best possible uses of resources are made for the children and young people in the educational organisations that they're learning in. That is the SRMA's focus. So we're looking today around maximising potential. My name is Sarah Ray, and I work for ISBL. I lead the team of school resource managements that work with ISBL. We've had about 200 people over the last few years. It was a pilot in 2018, and we are one of the national supplier organisations along with North Yorkshire County Council. So hence we have a good team of us here today. Now, we could be spending lots of time ISBL and North Yorkshire County Council telling you all about how marvellous our teams are, but what we're actually going to do is to spend most of this time having two discussions with an SRMA and with somebody who has been worked with and supported and collaborated with an SRMA, because what we want to bring out is that this is around collaboration. This is a system leadership role. It's not an expectoral role. It's not a role to find efficiencies or save money just for the sake of saving money. This is about working with an organisation, with the school business leaders, with the executive team, with the trustees, with the governors. The pilot started in 2018, so we're several years along the line, and we're going to end our session today. Nathan Jeremiah is going to come and talk about how we have a system whereby you can become an SRMA if you're interested, and on their stand you can register your interest. So if you are interested, that's great, and we hope that this session will help you to understand a little bit more about the role. As I've mentioned, it's about working in collaboration. And so we're going to spend most of the time having these two interviews. I would like, if possible, a show of hands, because we've got a number of people who are here who are SRMAs, and as mentioned earlier, it's quite bright up here. But if people who are an SRMA could raise their hands, and we're going to get that to happen at the end. So if you are interested in the role, there are lots of people here that you can talk about it with. Part of the report that an SRMA writes does have feedback from the organisation, and we have a document with hundreds of pages of positive feedback. So we hope that at the end of this session you will have a better understanding about what the role does, and also an understanding about how you become an SRMA if you're interested in that.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle Charlton from North Yorkshire County Council. I do a similar role to Sarah in that I manage the programme for North Yorkshire County Council, and we deploy SRMAs across the whole of the country as well. I've brought along with me today Dan Smith and Paula Brooks, who are going to talk about the deployment that Paula's trust undertook and the benefits from that. So we're going to start with just some questions and have a kind of a discussion, and then we'll pass back to Sarah and the team over there. So Paula, starting with you, why did Kite Academy Trust engage with the SRMA programme?
It was to address the financial challenges that are facing the industry as a whole, and particularly our trust. We're a MAT with 10 primary schools, falling numbers on roll, and we were making our first steps into the ICFP process as well, and I felt it would be important to engage with the SRMA to support with that process, but also to provide insights and to make sure that we were on the right track with our finances.
Brilliant. And what have been the advantages for the trust of working with Dan as an SRMA?
Well, working with Dan, it has provided validations for the findings that I had since I joined the trust. And we were able to report those out to the schools within the trust, but also back to the board as well, along with sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Along with the with the recommendations to be able to push the trust forward financially. And it was also confirmation that our own thinking was pushing us in the right direction as well.
Brilliant. So kind of external
validation
of what you were doing.
Absolutely, and it
Brilliant.
was the board found it very useful, as we have as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Dan, as an SRMA, what are the strengths of working with the trust and different trusts?
I think the key area that I quite enjoy is sharing best practice around the sector, going into different schools, different types of schools, exposure to new ideas which you can then pass around. You can introduce trusts or schools to one another if one trust is looking to do a particular strategy and another school has already gone through that process to eradicate some of the teething problems that they may have. For myself, it keeps myself updated, keeps myself challenged. Obviously, you go into schools, you make recommendations, you're going to get challenged. All recommendations should be evidence-based from what you find. And it's exposure to new ideas and just spreading those around and trying, like I say, trying to get best practice.
Brilliant. So what recommendations are there for wider strategies that you've developed from working together?
I think again it was we just talked about the affirmation of ideas, the things that Paula was thinking about doing, the trust were thinking about doing, and looking to implement those. Again, sort of external validation for those, and maybe again, putting Paula in touch with other people who've gone through those similar ideas.
From our point of view, exactly what Dan said, but we've taken it further than just the ideas. So we've already put through plans for looking at the staffing. We're not big bang everybody, but we started with the admin teams within our schools, and then we're going to work our way through. We're looking at obviously the teaching provision, and also we're very we're very concerned about harnessing the economies of scale that our 10 schools should be able to benefit from, with a look to procurement and also grant generation as well, income from those. So,
super, smashing. What elements need to be in place to ensure that the partnership between the trust and the SRMA is successful?
I think
make it a successful deployment.
I think the whole point of the deployments are to be supportive and not to be critical, and that's why I think it's important. I think we were talking earlier, Paula, about how you were very open to myself coming in, and very open about what you wanted to do and about all the data and information that you had. I mean, the key thing throughout all the deployments is communication and that two-way communication and the feedback. We only ever really ask for information that's usually readily available. We shouldn't be, the idea is not to put too much, for the trust or the school, there shouldn't be too much effort and additional time taken doing this. We should already be able to work on the information that's readily available.
And did you find that?
I did, yes. I mean, a lot of the information was very readily available because we provide it for audits anyway, so it's that same sort of information that you're providing. And I actually think it's very important to be open with the SRMA, and in our case, because if you're not open about your finances and about the impact various external things are having, they're never going to be able to give you a decent outcome and a report and ways to improve things.
Okay, any recommendations for anybody thinking about having a visit, asking for a visit?
I think it was very positive. It was a very positive step to take. Before we did, there's the traditional thought of them that they're coming in because you're in trouble. We're not in trouble. It's just for that confirmation that you are moving things in the right direction, and also external ideas of other things you can do to really underpin the values and the finances of your trust.
Excellent. Thank you. Any last words, Dan?
No, I think, going back, I used to be, CFO of a MAT and things like that. And I think it can be quite lonely. So it's quite nice to have a peer come in and sort of validate your ideas and talk things through with as well. So that can be useful.
Lovely. Thanks, guys. Cassandra.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we thought we'd start off this session by looking at that relationship with an SRMA and working with an academy, because initially the SRMA programme started working with academies. But we've developed, and I can safely say we've pretty much worked with every type of educational setting you can think of. So we thought it'd be useful to have an exploration of one of our team members working with a local authority. So we've invited one of our team, Peter Tompkins. Peter it works with a team of people at TSO Education. They do have a standard if you want to have a conversation. Peter's been an SRMA since 2019. I'm not quite sure how many deployments you've done, but an awful lot with a wide variety of organisations, and is one of our training partners and one of our mentors on our team as well. And we're really pleased to have Ali Mohammed here as well, who is the school's finance business partner at Haringey Council. So I'm going to be asking very similar questions, but drawing some of these things out as well. So first of all, Ali, just a couple of questions to you. Why and how did Haringey engage with the SRMA programme? A little bit about that process. What was your desired outcome, and how did you go about the relationship?
Afternoon, everyone. I think when I started with Haringey Council in 2018, there's lots of schools in deficit, cash flow problem, falling roll was becoming an issue slowly, and we used to get a call that we don't have a cash flow for the next week or something like that. So we started looking at how we can support schools, because I worked for Academy Trust as a CFO, and I know how the schools work. Business management role is how demanding and challenging it is. So from the local authority point of view, so we thought we need to develop a program to help and support schools. So then I came to know about SRMA. So we're looking at cash flow, we're looking at falling roll numbers, spending more than 85% from the salaries budget. We thought someone who's expert as an educationist and also from accounting point of view, help and support head teachers, governing body and business manager. So that's why we started looking at SRMA, and I think that has been very useful for us.
So hearing about the role, how did the contact happen between Peter and yourselves? What was the process? So
the process was with Marcia from the DFE, where we started talking to, and we started engaging with the DFE about this program. And what we did then, we had a presentation with the schools, business managers, to get an interest from the schools and see how many schools would be interested in. And there quite a few schools came up from the very first breakfast session we had with our business managers, and that's how we started engaging with the schools on that basis.
But that was really important, because rather than go straight in with the SRMA deployments, what Ali got me to do was do a presentation at one of their regular meetings with SBMs and with head teachers. So we did 2 presentations so that they understood what ICFP was all about, what the process was all about, what an SRMA deployment would be like before we actually launched into doing it. So there's a understanding across the local authority, so that schools are able to say, actually, we know that we've got a problem and we'll put up our hand and we really want to be part of this programme. We really want a SRMA deployment. So there's never any feeling, I don't think, in Haringey that any of the schools were having this done to them, because actually they were volunteering and saying this is going to be a really positive and supportive process, which has been really a really important part of the work that we've been doing in Haringey, because I have worked with other local authorities where it hasn't worked nearly as well, and I think there's a lot of learning that can be done about how to get this to work in local authorities in an effective way. Sorry, Sarah.
No, it's good. Thank you for your honesty, because we have had a variety of ways of working with local authorities and we've learned that getting buy-in from the very beginning, just in the same way as colleagues here have talked about buy-in, particularly if you're working with a large multi-academy trust, enabling people to understand what the role is about is vital. Obviously, people are sent a lot of information, but we're busy people and people don't always read it, and therefore that needs to be reiterated, that this is collaborative, it's supportive, it's not a done-to process, and it's certainly not a role just coming to find out how money can be saved. Yeah. And so we've heard that in the discussion with colleagues regarding the work in maths. And so what I want to ask you next, Ali, is what have been the advantages for you and your colleagues in Haringey about working with Peter as an SRMA?
So I think where the schools comes to us and because of they are in financial difficulty, because of the falling roll number, when you talk to them ISFP, we have done it. So I think what they need to do is to do it the way I would say Peter did the exercise with the schools. I think making them understand what actually is trying to achieve this matrix. Understanding matrix is very important for governors, for the business managers. The advantage is when I get a report, I know about that school because it has all the people numbers, staffing structures, the current, proposed, or something suggestions. And also I think it's very important what schools sometimes do not focus on is the service level agreements they have. And that's where the key savings are. So when we get a report, it's a very detailed report about that schools, and we can then go back and speak to the head teachers and governor and say, look, this is what you're currently doing. We can do it something different. We can save money. It's not all about losing staff. I think it's the way you're looking at how we can kind of, make the equation that it works. One of the schools in Haringey gone through the SRMA, never been thought about of the vertical integration because the people numbers below 24. So our average is 24. If you don't have people numbers in the class, about 24, you're making deficit. And that's what I think we started looking at, how we started supporting schools. And I think now, because initially you will get resistance from the head teachers, but now I think once they understand the whole process, they talk to us, they're very comfortable at, and also I've sent quite a few other SRMA deployments to the DFE. So I think that's where the positive work, also I think building relationship with the head teachers is very important as well.
Yeah, no, I just back up what Ali said. I think one of the key things, and I think it's been said a couple of times during the day today anyway, is because I was talking to the head teachers and the school business professionals outside of the deployments, it's about emphasising that when you're doing an ICFP analysis, you've obviously got your benchmark ranges, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to level everyone down to those benchmarks. It's just about that is the national position. So we have these discussions with schools where you say, okay, you want to have, I'm thinking about that one you're talking about just now, Ali, where we moved to mixed age classes because they wanted to have single year classes. But we say, okay, you can do that because if you can afford it, but actually it's going to cost you, say, an extra £120,000 a year to do that. Is that actually how you want to use that £120,000? And I think once you can say, this is what that's costing you to be outside of the benchmark, that's fine if you can justify it and it's getting the impact and it's having the making the difference to your school that you want it to have. But actually, sometimes head teachers start thinking then, actually, if I had £120,000 back, then I wouldn't be spending it on 2 extra teachers. I'll be spending it on whatever it is that they know, another project that they know is really going to have an impact in the school. So it's not necessarily about saving money, it's about how you're deploying your money, how you're using your money, and being able to have those conversations before I actually started the deployments was really helpful. Because if I give an example of another local authority I did a deployment with, and obviously I won't name them, but I had the meetings with the school and I wrote the report, And then I was getting these really odd messages back from the head about the report that I'd written. And it's only when I actually got on the phone to them and said, what's the problem here? Why do we seem to be butting heads on this? And they said, well, the LA said that you're coming in to judge the quality of our financial leadership in our school. And I said, absolutely, 100% not. I was a secondary head teacher for 6 years. I could have trained to be an Ofsted inspector, but I don't want to be a bloody Ofsted inspector because I don't want to go in and tell people either you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. And I certainly wouldn't be an SRMA if I thought that's what it is about. It's not about making a judgment. It's about sharing good practice, as was mentioned earlier, and trying to improve things for children, for pupils in schools, and getting the best deployment of resources for them.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Peter, what do you think are the strengths for an SRMA of working with a local authority?
I was thinking about this earlier, and it's something that came up in the first session this morning as well, which is about context. Because I think I've now done 3 deployments in Haringey. So in terms, I know not Haringey isn't a sort of identical area in every school, but I do understand now the context of Haringey, the context that those schools are working in. So I think I've got that deep knowledge of what's going on. And also because when you do an SRMA report for a local authority, you have to do a report on the LA as well. That's part of what you do. So I have a really good understanding now of how Ali and his team at Haringey work. So when I'm going into schools, I can be signposting them to the things that I know are on offer in the LA if they're not actually accessing those things. So yes, it's that deep understanding of the context, but also a real understanding of what's on offer within the local authority.
Thank you. And I think Rebecca Beaver, who's here today, mentioned earlier that context is key, and that's the essence of those initial conversations that an SRMA will have with the organisation's leader. It's not just about looking at data, and that's why meetings take place over a period of time, because it's about building a relationship, building an understanding, and therefore being able to provide some evidence-based recommendations. So moving on to the recommendations, this sort of word has been mentioned a few times. What does that actually mean? What does a report look like? How do recommendations happen, Peter?
Right, okay, so the recommendations, I guess picking up on what I said just now, the recommendations happen through the discussion that follows on from the ICFP analysis. So the recommendation isn't something that you do remotely, it's through that discussion with the local authority and with the school about, now you know that you're this far outside that benchmark, are you absolutely sure that's how you're going to spend the money? Now, sometimes when the schools are in deficit, then you have to say, well, actually, you need to look at how you're spending the money and change it. But sometimes it's more of a discussion about, is this the best use of that money, or is there another use of the money? And that's where your recommendation comes in, through that real discussion.
Thank you. And the use of the word recommendations is really important, because at the end of the day, it's the organisation and their governance leaders who are going to make decisions about whether those recommendations are taken forward or not. And the SRMA, the SFA don't come back and do some sort of telling off if people haven't taken forward the recommendations, because it may be that there are a suite of recommendations and that not all of them would be applicable at an immediate point in time. Some of them might be long-term recommendations. So what are the elements that need to be in place to ensure that the partnership is successful? And that would be interesting for both of you to reflect on. Thank you. Ali?
Yeah, if I can start with, I think is important is about SRMA. once head teachers and business managers know about SRMA, the way we engage as a breakfast club session, so we had breakfast club session, Peter did a training session, see what it's all about, and then we did a training as well to the school business managers on ISFP metrics. That's also something we're looking at. I think that helps us to bring SRMA deployment in Harringay Council, because that's the first year, isn't it? We were looking at it. And I think then what Peter had is the layout of what information he needs is very important, because business managers, information is there, because worked as a business manager, I know this information is at the tip of the hand, because sometimes the business manager's role is very demanding. And I think if you had all this laid out, what is expectation from the business manager, what information do we need to get this report completed, and I think also then lay out the program and action plan, things like that. That made life easier for us, to business managers, to engage with Peter. And governance is important as well, I think, because you need to get all governors involved into that all this process.
Absolutely. It's been really nice working with Ali because it's a long-term arrangement. Often as an SRMA, when you're working with a single academy trust or multi-academy trust, you do your deployment, you go away again. Because we've developed the relationship, the sort of openness and trust that we have now between Ali and myself and the local authority, it is a long-term deployment, so long-term relationship. So I've been doing governor training for them as well as part of what we've been part of the process. So that new governors coming through also understand the ICFP process and how to benchmark and what the metrics mean and what they indicate and so on. So it's the openness and the trust, and it's that long-term relationship, because talking to other SRMAs, they often prefer to do multi-academy trust deployments, because you get the information from schools a lot quicker with a multi-academy trust, because there's a different sort of relationship there, and the CFO will say, we need it and we need it tomorrow, and it goes to Peter. It's more difficult, Ali, isn't it, with local authorities, because you don't have quite the same.
Yeah, business managers move on, then it's just, left. So that's
but oh, sorry. Yeah. No. But yes, that can be a real frustration sometimes, because you're waiting for the information, and let's be frank, I don't get paid until I finish the deployment. So that can be a real frustration, but that's very much balanced out by the enjoyment you get out of genuinely making a difference for a local authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you both. And I think one of the things that all the SRMAs who've talked during today have mentioned, that this is interesting, challenging and rewarding work for them. Great CPD, just like the other system leadership roles, National Lead of Education, National Lead of Governance. There's absolutely learning on both sides, and that's therefore spreading that good practice in the system. So thank you very much, everybody who has taken part today, this afternoon. Michelle and I work together. We're both leaders of our teams, but we work collaboratively, because essentially we want, if you like, the good news about SRMAs to be spread. We're aware that there have been some sort of negative stories which linger, and we know that the positive affirmation that we get from organisations who have worked with an SRMA cover pages and pages. And we hope that you'll have had a little bit of a glimpse of those relationships and how they develop, how the work actually happens. Most deployments are about 5 days, but that isn't 5 consecutive days. That's 5 days over a period of weeks. Some are much more, because the organisation may be much larger, and that's decided in conjunction with the ESFA and the SFA case lead. So, if you're interested in becoming an SRMA, we really want to hear from you. We hope that this has raised your interest. There is an induction and accreditation process, which is challenging, and I'm now going to hand over to Nathan from EPI, who's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Go to the podium. do I make the slide move? Ooh. Oh, right, okay, well, I'm going to be winging it now then, folks. Oh, maybe. Hey. One more slide, I think. Hey, there we go. I think the word that struck me from the panel today and listening to everyone is partnership. For me, that's really resonated through everything that everyone has said. And Sarah's absolutely right. We want SRMAs to be sector leaders and system leaders across the UK. EPI's role in the SRMA programme is to accredit SRMAs to go and work in partnership with our local authorities, with our multi-academy trust, with our school leaders. And we very much worked in partnership with ISBL, Sarah, Michelle at North Yorkshire to create an approach and a process of induction, case study and accreditation that mirrors as much as we possibly can what an actual deployment looks like and what it feels like. It kicks off with an induction that starts first and foremost with an online call, and we'll walk you through the whole process. We then follow that up and give you an opportunity to actually talk to the likes of an SRMA. Sorry, I don't know why I forgot about SRMA then. Actually talk to an SRMA, that's what I'm here talking about. Actually talk to an SRMA about what it's like to be an SRMA on a one-to-one basis so that you can, well, to be frank, grill them and actually find out what it's like in the real world and is it something that you really want to go and do. Following on from that, we put a training session on and it's run by Andy Hamilton. I don't think Andy's actually here today, but Andy runs that session and it equips you with the tools and the knowledge that and builds on the knowledge that you already have as a practicing system leader to then lead you into the case study and the accreditation panel itself. The case study is done offline. It's a date that you choose, and we give you a sample case, an actual sample set of data. We don't ask you to go and try and get it from the school itself, and we ask you to run the metrics and actually come up with some recommendations and assumptions on that case study to be able to then take that to panel. The panel itself is then a discussion. It is a very much an adult discussion about the case study that you were sent, the conversation that you'll be having with the school lead, the CEO, the chair of trustees, etc., the local authority. And the outcome from that decision is then shared with your supplier, and we really look forward to passing everyone, and I mean that sincerely. We really want everyone to pass. So, really, if you're interested, come and find us outside, come and talk to us even more. Any one of us here knows about the process. We really, really are interested to see new SRMAs join the programme. So thank you.
We do have 5 minutes left. We've been given our 5-minute warning. So if there are any questions that you'd like to ask any of the panel, please do. Yes. You can't see, can you?
No, I can't see a thing.
By the light.
Quick time. So this has been very positive, and I am interested in being an SRMA, but I've got a question. If you're an academy, well, if you're maintaining school with an academy order, the experience, which I have been through, can be very different, and it's almost, well, you need to be in the academy because you're inadequate, therefore you must have an SRMA as part of the academy order. How do you deal with, well, that was experience that the school that I went to help, they had a deficit budget, and because they'd been rated double inadequate, they then had to have a deployment like this. And that experience for the school at the time was very disheartening, because they had a school business professional in school who they felt as though their role was insignificant, and they didn't feel it was their fault that the savings couldn't be achieved because of sort of balancing the priorities with staffing levels and things.
Thank you, yes. So Peter and Nathan, I think, are going to make a comment. Peter?
Yeah. No, yes, sometimes you have to start off the deployment by dissipating that fear, really, because the SRMA visit, like I said earlier, is never actually about making a judgment. And if you're going into a school that's been rated double inadequate and is in cumulative deficit and has an academy order, then what you're doing as an SRMA is going in to try and help, to try and give the best advice that you can, because there is always something you can do about the cumulative deficit that you've got, and you need to be starting to make those decisions moving forward, whether you're becoming joining a multi-academy trust or not. But yes, a lot of what we're doing is about dissipating fear when we go in, because I have no power to make any judgment over whether something is good or bad or not. I can say, this is what I'd do. This is what actually, we try not to say this is what I'd do, because that's very easy to come back with saying, but that's not what I'd do. But so we try and make sure that it's evidence-based, and we're saying, well, this is what the metrics are telling you. Let's work together to see what you can possibly do to address it. But it should never be something that people fear, but I quite understand that it sometimes is. And a lot of what we do in the first meeting is to say, you know, I'm here to help and advise and support, and I'm not going to make any judgments at all.
Thank you.
I would echo everything Peter's just said, and the other thing I would say is, coming at it from the perspective, if you're a prospective SRMA candidate that's walked into a situation that is an inadequate, that's multiple times, or a school that's in deficit that you've inherited, that is not a barrier to becoming an SRMA. If anything, that's plaudable, and we absolutely want to celebrate that. And actually, I can talk of this week, I think it was one of your candidates, that literally walked into the same situation and is continuing through the process and is doing an absolutely fantastic job. So that is not a barrier.
Thank you. Good question. Any more questions? One over here. Thank you. And Michelle, if we hand that over to somebody in your team this
We don't know what it is.
if they want to answer it.
Hi, mine's more of a point, if I can just say. It's Sharon Thorpe. I am an SRMA and a team leader for the East Midlands and Humber. Nathan mentioned when he was standing that he wants everybody to pass the accreditation, and that would be a wish, but I don't want people to think it's an easy process.
No.
So it might be a wish, but actually it's not a reality. You know, the process is structured and can be difficult for some people, so it's only the right people that are actually accredited that can go in and do that work.
You're absolutely right. I'll come straight in there, and I won't lie, it is a tough process, it is challenging, and it is there to test you. It is a high bar. We're looking for really strong system leaders, but we also want it to be a rewarding process. It's supportive. It shouldn't feel like it's broken you at the end of it. Quite the opposite. And we have a really positive mindset about how we approach this, and that's why I talked about it in such a positive light like then. But yeah, I can't deny you're quite right. It is challenging.
Can I just just add to that? I've done the accreditation panels for a couple of years now, and sometimes, and I want to say this to encourage people to apply, really, because sometimes you realise during those accreditation panels that the person isn't quite there yet. So actually, you spend the accreditation panel as a sort of training, as a training session to try and help fill in those gaps, so that next time people come for an accreditation, they will pass. So it's a very supportive process, although I do agree it is a very tough process as well.
Thank you. Sharon, I'm sorry I couldn't recognise you. It's really hard to see anybody. The lights are so fierce. So thank you. And as Sharon mentioned, she's one of our regional team leaders in the ISBL team. So I think we're at time now. We'll hang around. So if you've got any questions at all or want to just ask us anything at all, we'll be here. It's tea and coffee break and then the next session. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope you're having a terrific day. It's great to see people, isn't it, below, and see people have legs as well after talking with people for so long on Team and Zoom meetings. So have a good day. Thank you. And thank you to everybody in the panel. Much appreciated.